is Jess Sundin. And Jess Sundin has an interesting story, just a little bit about Jess. Jess is a founding member of the Twin Cities-based Anti-War Committee. Most of her recent activism has been in opposition to the wars and occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan. But she has also worked to oppose U.S. military aid to the repressive governments of Colombia and Israel. She and her partner live with their 6-year-old daughter in South Minneapolis. On September 24, their home was raided by the FBI, which was searching for evidence of material support to foreign terrorist organizations. You can't make this stuff up. What actually happened, I guess, is like something that one of the greatest minds or some of the greatest minds in Hollywood can't even come up with. Without further ado, let's hear from Jess Sundin.
Please speak directly into the mic.
I'll try if my mic's not falling. We'll see how this goes. I'm a little shorter than the other speakers. Thank you. All right, well, thank you, Philadelphia, for inviting me here, and particularly the ACLU here. It's a sad honor to be able to share my story with you and to know that the spying that has happened to you and is happening here in Pennsylvania could wind you up in the situation that I found myself in early on a Friday morning in September. I was asleep when I heard a bang at the door, 3 loud raps at the door, and by the time I was downstairs, there were something like 8 federal agents beginning to fan out across my house to go through every room and look at all of our personal belongings and pick and choose what they wanted to take with them. Over the course of 4 or 5 hours, as I said, they went through everything. They took books and CDs, computers, cell phones. They were very interested in anything with names and phone numbers. They took address books. They took, lists, sign-up lists for the activism that I do. They were very interested in anything political. So they took flyers from events like this one tonight, flyers from events that I've organized in the Anti-War Committee, or information about Palestine or Colombia, which were places of interest in their investigation. They looked through my daughter's belongings, she's 6. They looked through the archives that I have from my grandfather, who died earlier this year at age 92. No stone was unturned in my home. And as this was happening, we were told that we were not detained, but that we weren't to make any phone calls. I insisted that I be able to call an attorney, and I called an attorney that I know with the National Lawyers Guild. He was actually in New Orleans at their national convention for their organization, and while the raid was happening in my house, they started having meetings in New Orleans to talk about legal defense. He got word back to the Twin Cities, to others who weren't facing the raids at that moment about what was happening. My cell phone, I heard it kept ringing and I couldn't pick it up. I sometimes was able to see the caller ID, who it was. First I saw my friend Meredith Abbey was trying to call me. Then my friend Nick Kelly was trying to call me. A number of people were trying to call me. And I later found out that their homes were being raided at the same time. In fact, at 7 a.m. on a Friday, 5 homes in Minneapolis and the offices of the Anti-War Committee, as well as 2 homes in Chicago, were all simultaneously raided by federal agents. And also at that same time, they were knocking on other doors, passing out subpoenas to appear before a grand jury, or asking people if they would talk to them about their associations with us and their case that they're trying to build. There were a total of probably more than 70 federal agents involved in this operation, and it didn't stop on the morning of Friday the 24th. The following Monday, a few more subpoenas were passed out, and all 14 people have been subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury. They started visiting other people who know us. One of my friends, a dear friend that I've known for 12 years, FBI agents came to her work. Her supervisor said, "There's someone here to see you." Brought her to the conference room in a building where she works, and they asked her if she would talk to them. She said, "I don't want to talk to you." They said, "Do you want to know what this is about?" She said, "Maybe." And they said, "It's about Jess Sundin," that's me, and they named a couple other people, and how they manipulate people, and how they manipulated you. To another home, a woman who hosted a fundraiser for a group of people, solidarity activists who were traveling to visit the Palestinian people last summer. She hosted a dinner at her home. They knocked on her door and they said, she was interested in why they were visiting her as well. And they said, well, there are people who claim to be raising money for charities, but they're channeling it, they're funneling it to other things, very ominously. Both of them and everyone else who they visited has refused to talk to them. And that deserves a round of applause. While the raid was still going on at my home, word got out. People started assembling. There was something like 20 people on my front lawn before the raid was over. And at the homes of all the other activists, both in Minneapolis and Chicago, there were small little protests happening, gatherings, hundreds of people gathered at our homes to support us. The day of the raid, we had a press conference that evening on my front lawn. 150 people were there. That night, we had a meeting in a church much like this one, a meeting hall like this one, and more than 250 people came to talk about how we can respond. The same thing was happening in Chicago. The following week, there were more than 60 protests at FBI offices around the country, more than 60 different cities. And they've been continued. Maybe there was one here, I'm not sure. Thank you, I'm getting a nod, so you guys know about that. And we've received more than 120 solidarity statements from organizations, not only around the country, but around the world, supporting us and recognizing that our rights are being violated, and that the work we have been doing, the work that has caught the attention of the authorities, is important work, and it's a legitimate work, and it's work that we need to continue. I am going to tell you a little bit about who we are, and then, what I think got us into this mess, if you will. And then I'm going to talk about how we've been responding. Mostly, I would describe all 14 of us who've been subpoenaed as anti-war and international solidarity activists. The anti-war movement is a big, broad movement. Many of you may consider yourselves anti-war activists. Maybe all of you have been to an anti-war march or talk at some point in the last 50 years. I don't know. There have been a lot of them, right? But no, it's a big, broad movement. But within that, we have this perspective of international solidarity. I believe that American people are not interested in bombing the homes of people just like them in other countries. I believe that they don't share an interest with the imprisonment of trade unionists in other countries who are just like them. And I find that as an anti-war activist, if I bring back the stories, the voices, the pictures of people just like you and me who are facing repression beyond anything we're talking about here today, that the American people can't sign on to that. They don't support it, and they want to speak out against it. And so for me, it's been very important as a tool of building an anti-war movement, but also to stand with people like us who are facing these crimes against humanity. 10 years ago, I traveled to Colombia, and at that time, I did two things. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell the grand jury, I'm going to tell you about that later. I'm not going to tell the FBI, but I'm going to tell you guys what I did in Colombia. The first thing I did is I went to a conference. The social movement was having a meeting. Trade unions, student organizations, women's groups, mothers of the disappeared. They were meeting to talk about Plan Colombia, which is the U.S. military aid package at that time. Colombia is the top recipient of U.S. foreign aid in this hemisphere, in Latin America. And in fact, our money is fueling a devastating civil war. Colombia is a place where being involved, being active, not only gets you spied on and on a list with the ITRR, it could be a death sentence. It's certainly likely to have you land you in prison. In fact, every day, trade unionists are killed or imprisoned in Colombia. And so I wanted to meet with them and hear about their perspective on our government's involvement in their country and what their hopes were for peace and social justice within Colombia. The other thing I did, and this is the really, really terrible thing I did. Now you gotta promise me you're not gonna tell the FBI this, are you? Okay, I'll take that smile that I see as an agreement. No, the other thing I did is that the FARC, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of of Colombia, the biggest guerrilla movement there, was engaged in peace talks with the Colombian government. They had open town hall meetings like this one in a town in southern Colombia where people from around the country could come and speak and testify to what they wanted to be peace to look like in Colombia. So while I was there, they were having one of these public audiences, these meetings with youth. And busloads of young people from around Colombia were coming to talk about the problems of access to education, problems of unemployment and access to healthcare, issues that concern young people in Colombia, and things that they thought had to be resolved in order to achieve lasting peace in Colombia. That's what they were testifying about. I went there, and I listened to their stories. And I also met with the guerrillas who were involved in those peace talks, like reporters from the New York Times, like diplomats from Europe. I did the same thing that hundreds of people were doing at that time. And now I'm here telling you about how the FBI came to my home because they're concerned that I supported terrorists, specifically in Colombia. And they're also interested about the search warrants for others and subpoenas for others, support for organizations in Palestine. Now, the work that I have done is the same as the other 13 people. We're folks who go on these solidarity trips and we try to hear the story from the perspective of the people under attack, the people living through U.S. war and militarism. You and I, unfortunately, we pay for it. Some of our sons and daughters, our cousins, our children go off to fight in those wars, but really they're being fought on other people's land. And so the people that are under this attack are people like who take concern in that. We also have something in common with you. All of us were involved in organizing the big anti-war march on the first day of the Republican Convention in Minnesota in 2008 in St. Paul. 10 of us are trade unionists. Most of us are parents. I have a 6-year-old daughter. She's one of the oldest of the little children that we have. Some of us are socialists. One of us is a great-grandmother. 2 of us have spouses who are non-citizen immigrants. We are people with deep roots in our communities, but we have been called to something bigger than just our own lives, bigger than just our own families. And, while it certainly was never my intention, it was never my belief that I was doing anything illegal. I still don't think I've done anything wrong, but there's apparently this law banning material support to foreign terrorist organizations. Now, the first thing, you might think material support meant money, maybe guns, at least clothes. It doesn't only mean that, in fact. And I want to talk a little bit about that law, and then I'll get back to our situation, if that's okay. I believe the law first came into effect in 1996, but it was expanded and strengthened along with the Patriot Act and other changes after 9/11. It doesn't only include things like funding what you might think of as terrorist operations. In Minnesota, we have a large Somali population, and several women from Rochester, Minnesota, have been prosecuted under this law for sending used clothing to Somalia. It sickens me that this is even subject to investigation. It's a country where it's their homeland, and they want to send something back to help people that they know and love. Unfortunately, the people that they're sending it to happen to also be associated with Al-Shabaab, which is one of the largest political movements within Somalia, and so that has gotten them under the attention of this law. Another organization that has been targeted by this law is the Humanitarian Law Project, which actually, unfortunately, lost a case before the Supreme Court in a decision that came out in June. They wanted to work with the Kurdish Workers' Party in Turkey, and they wanted to do things like train them how to petition the UN. Now, certainly the Turkish government has an interest in seeing the Kurdish Workers' Party viewed by the world as terrorists. But the idea that any organization, no matter what else they do, doesn't have the right to engage in legally petitioning in organizations like the United Nations, or even greater than that, or also on top of that, that you and I don't have the right to suggest that maybe they could and tell them a little bit about what we know about how they could, that these are now crimes under this law. It's even been suggested that old Jimmy Carter, former president, could be prosecuted for his work. Most of what he does now is elections monitoring. So he's had the gall to talk to people like Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is another organization on this list. Now, since he's a former president, he's unlikely to face what I faced. He probably won't have the FBI knocking down his door, but he could. That this law makes it illegal for us to have all kinds of interactions with organizations in other countries, not just arming them or paying for their terrorist operations. I think the other thing is, so there's a real problem with the government stretching this law as far as they can possibly stretch it. When the Star Tribune printed that I was subject to these raids because they were investigating whether I had provided material support to foreign terrorist organizations, that's not what people were thinking. They were thinking, oh my God, she might have talked to people. Oh my God, maybe, she knows people that are bad and she reprinted quotes of them on the internet. But in fact, this is the kind of activity that I have done. I personally don't believe it should be illegal for us to send humanitarian aid, for us to support political movements in other countries. There's a long history of that here, in fact. In fact, if the material support law were being enforced in the past as it is now, those who were part of the anti-apartheid movement would have been subject to it, because Nelson Mandela was on the terrorist list until the day he became the president of South Africa. The FMLN from El Salvador was on this terrorist list. So anyone involved in the Central America movement would have been subject to prosecution of this law. I was just in New York where there's a lot of Irish folks, and there's been a ton of support for the Irish struggle. Everyone who participated in that would have been subject to prosecution under this law. I believe that this law isn't fair. I don't agree with everyone that they say is a terrorist. It's subjective. It's not like there's some checklist, and once you check off all the checkboxes, then you're a terrorist, and then this law applies to you. In fact, there's not even a way to appeal it. In fact, if you and I don't believe that an organization should be on this list, and it's not fair, it's possible that we could even be prosecuted for material support for a terrorist organization if we lobby our legislators or the president to remove organizations from that list. The implications of this are sweeping. I realize that not everyone here is an anti-war activist, but certainly this country has a long history of being a place that people fighting for liberation could come and at least talk about their experiences. At least talk. And that is now, well, certainly it's something that hasn't always worked out, but I'm just saying this law is extreme in its restrictions, and there are no protections to guarantee even the rights of speech, let alone association, dissent, and the other things we've been talking about here today. So, based on this law, my home was searched, and at the end of the search, I was handed a grand jury subpoena. And I don't know how much you guys know about the grand jury. Some of you are probably lawyers. I'm not. My little brother said he always imagined the grand jury was like a really, really good jury. With like the judge had a fancy robe and the jury box was gold-plated and they had bubbly water instead of tap water. Grand. Quite the contrary, actually. Grand juries are the opposite of anything that you or I would even see on TV that might possibly be part of the democratic judicial process. The grand jury, the whole courtroom is run by the prosecutor. There is no judge in a fancy robe or any robe, no judge. Not only that, if you are called before the grand jury, you don't get to bring an attorney with you. In fact, you may not even know, I do not know, if you are a target of the grand jury, someone they're hoping to indict, or just a witness against your friends, colleagues, and associates. You don't even know. The proceedings of a grand jury are secret. It's an unfair system. Lawyers tell me that they have a joke about grand juries, that a prosecutor could even indict in a grand jury a ham sandwich. I'm a vegetarian, so I'm hoping that will help me out. But the thing is, the grand juries are unfair. The law that they're investigating us under is unfair. And the thing that I'm most concerned about is if they hold up a picture of someone, did you meet this person in Colombia? And I want to tell you why I'm worried about that. Earlier, one of the speakers talked about the investigations of the Central America movement. In that time, the FBI worked together with the CIA and probably some other organizations and the Salvadoran National Police. When the mailing lists of organizations like CISPES, the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador, when those mailing lists were stolen and they found the names of Salvadoran people on those lists, Salvadorans were deported by immigration here, sent back to El Salvador, where the Salvadoran police were given their names, and they later turned up either disappeared or murdered. And I could not live with myself if people that I met in Colombia, people who showed me, who opened their homes to me and shared their stories with me, could be killed because of something I might reveal to the grand jury. So I won't. And in fact, none of us intend to. All of us have told the prosecutor that we intend to exercise our right not to testify under the Fifth Amendment. Unfortunately, that's another amendment that's not real rock solid, and under a grand jury, they can impose immunity and say, you have to testify, or if you don't, we're going to send you to jail for contempt of court. And that's what all of us are facing now. The first 3 people are getting called back this week. Their lawyers are talking to the prosecutor this week about when they have to appear. And they will probably be going to jail. I will probably be going to jail. Not for committing a crime, not for even being accused of a crime, but for refusing to testify against my friends and political associates here in the United States and abroad. We've got to stand up to this. None of us want to cooperate with this, and none of us intend to. We've been working hard to build a broad base of support for the activists that are under attack, but also for these issues more broadly. The fact is that people have said they hope to chill dissent by these kind of activities. But, I'm from Minnesota. We don't mind a little frostbite here and there. Just bundle up and keep doing the work we're doing, We've got to push back against this. We can't let them use this to silence us. We've been trying to build up political pressure to stop the grand jury, to stop the FBI investigation, and to change this material support law. There's postcards outside of you, and sign them before you go, asking Obama to intervene on our behalf. We're certainly working hard in the legal defense of the individuals that are being called, but I really believe that our greatest defense, is our movement, is our movements, all of us, standing together. This isn't the first time it's happened, it's not the last time. I'm from Minnesota, I said I was from Minnesota like 7 times now. The American Indian movement was subjected to the worst kind of repression at the hands of the FBI. The Black Liberation Movement, the Black Panthers in particular, but certainly the MOVE organization here in Philadelphia, there is a history of repression that goes way back before. We've had an outpouring of support not only from oppressed communities, but from the labor movement, because that movement too has been faced with this kind of repression. We've learned from history, but I don't think we're doomed to repeat it, but for now it seems like we're repeating it today. And I'm really excited that we're able to come together across many issues we work on and remember that our right to speak out, to change this society is the most important right. Not one that is granted us, but one that we take every day, that we choose to come out to a meeting or a demonstration or speak out for real justice. This world cries out for justice, and I don't think we're going to fight. I agree, we're probably not going to fight it in the courtrooms, but if we want to fight against injustice there, we're going to have to demand justice out here. So I stand in solidarity with you as you fight against the spying of the organizations here in Pennsylvania, and I hope that we can work together to push back against this repression more broadly. Thank you.